Okay, let's unpack this. We're going on a deep dive today that tracks the very DNA of modern Silicon Valley back to one single high-stakes payment company from the early 2000s.
It's really the creation myth, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And when
Yeah.
you look at the names, Musk, Thiel, Hoffman, Hurley, it's a staggering realization.
hmm
The founders of Tesla and LinkedIn and YouTube and Palantir, they all worked together at
Yeah.
one point, sharing coffee, sharing code, and, eventually sharing a $1.5 billion payday that changed everything.
It really is ground zero for the tech landscape we see today. The influence is,
Yeah.
it's systemic. We are talking about the godfather of tech mafias.
Yeah.
This is the group that basically wrote the playbook for how successful startup employees take their money and their talent and just redeploy it.
So for you listening, how would we define the PayPal Mafia?
I mean, simply put, the PayPal Mafia is this group of individuals who were right there at the start of PayPal.
Hmm.
And they still, I mean, we're talking 2 decades later, and they still wield this massive centralized clout in Silicon Valley.
And it is massive. They aren't just investors anymore, are they? They're the people writing the rules.
They're writing the rules. They're on the boards of the most influential companies. They're founding entire industries, like, private space travel.
And they're also opinion makers who really shape the cultural and even the political conversation around technology.
Exactly. They became these institutional gatekeepers almost overnight after the sale. And what's so fascinating is how the name itself came about.
Right. They didn't call themselves that.
Oh, no, not at all. It was coined by Fortune magazine back in 2007 in a cover story by a journalist named Jeff.
Oh, the photo shoot. It's one of the most iconic images in tech history, for sure.
It absolutely is. They got 13 members of this mafia together at Tosca Bar in San Francisco,
It's a famous.
a very famous spot. And the whole thing was a theatrical nod to The Sopranos.
We're talking force drama, tracksuits, leather blazers.
Silky shirts, heavy gold chains. I mean, it's an image of power, but it's also, it's almost comically self-aware.
I love that visual. It just captures the, shall we say, questionable fashion of the 2000s forever. But the funniest part of it is the contrast with who they actually were.
Exactly. Max Levchin, one of the co-founders, he explained to O'Brien that, before all the fame, they were actually math-loving workaholics who did not get laid very often.
Which is such a critical grounding detail.
That is. They weren't born moguls. They were intellectually intense engineers and analysts. They dressed up like gangsters for a picture, but their real identity was purely technical, obsessed with solving these really complex problems like digital fraud.
It shows that underneath all that shtick and swagger was just genuine world-altering capability, built on pure technical grit. So let's look at the company's early history for a second, just to see how this team was built and then why they were scattered. PayPal didn't even start as PayPal.
Correct. It began in 1998 as a company called Confinity, founded by Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, and Luke Nosek. And their initial focus wasn't even digital payments.
What were they doing?
They were focused on security software for handheld devices, for PDAs.
Wow.
They just realized pretty quickly that peer-to-peer payments were a much more urgent problem that their security knowledge could solve.
That focus on security is a key piece of the puzzle that I think people miss. It informs so much of what they all did later, especially Thiel and Levchin.
It does. But the real turning point, the thing that created the dynamic tension of the company, was the merger. Confinity merged with X.com.
And X.com was Elon Musk's baby.
It was Elon Musk's venture, along with Ed Ho, Harris Fricker, and Christopher Payne. And Musk's vision was much broader. He wanted to create this comprehensive online financial services hub.
So when Confinity merged with X.com, you suddenly had these two very powerful, very competitive, and very different teams under one roof.
Exactly. And that union, which happened in 2000, is what ultimately led to the company being renamed PayPal.
And that period of intense internal rivalry, I mean, you had Thiel's group versus Musk's group, technical focus versus this huge sweeping vision. That friction is so crucial to the story.
Oh, absolutely. That competitive environment where those two teams were forced together is a big reason why they were also resilient later on.
It created battle-tested leaders.
It really did. They had already survived corporate warfare before they even had to deal with threats from the outside.
Yeah?
But the ultimate catalyst for the Mafia's creation, that was the exit.
The big success. Company went public, had its IPO in early 2002.
And was then acquired by eBay for a staggering $1.5 billion later that same year.
$1.5 billion.
That was the defining moment. It was this massive liquidity event that just dispersed all this newly capitalized talent like seeds in the wind across the entire tech landscape.
Because suddenly you have dozens of these brilliant, battle-tested engineers and execs with serious capital in their pockets.
Right. And crucially, they had a shared network and a common war history. It enabled them to launch pretty much anything they wanted without needing to go ask for seed money or validation from anyone else.
And that shared experience, the battle scars you mentioned, that's what cemented the loyalty that defines the Mafia. They overcame these massive legal, regulatory, and competitive threats, which are all chronicled in Eric Jackson's book, The PayPal Wars.
It was that intense shared crisis that forged these long-term connections that, money just can't buy.
Which brings us directly to the core visionaries, the men often called the Dons of the Mafia. And we have to start with Peter Thiel. He's often seen as the foundational capitalist, the intellectual architect, and for sure the most high-profile political activist of the group.
Thiel was a co-founder of Confinity, and his financial win from PayPal was immediate. When eBay bought the company, he walked away with $55 million from his 3.7% stake.
And he did not see that as retirement money.
No, he saw it as foundational capital for whatever came next, his next chapter.
And his post-PayPal ventures are arguably just as transformative as PayPal, just in completely different fields. He immediately created a hedge fund, Clarium Capital.
But there are two names that really define his long-term legacy and influence outside of finance. The first one, and maybe the most mysterious, is Palantir Technologies.
Palantir is the heavyweight, and it's such a brilliant extension of Confinity's original focus on security and data.
It really is. It provides software and data integration platforms, mainly for these huge, sensitive clients. The U.S. government, the military, intelligence agencies, law enforcement.
So it's not just another software company.
No, it's basically a national security infrastructure company, which gives Thiel this immense influence way beyond just consumer apps. Palantir essentially created the market for what's called data fusion. Meaning taking massive, totally separate data sets, think flight records, financial transactions, you name it, and weaving them together into coherent, actionable intelligence.
Which, as we said, was Confinity's original focus before they pivoted to payments. It's all connected.
That's right. And the second defining name, which is more consumer-facing but just as important for his VC legacy, is Facebook.
Right. Thiel became the first external investor in Facebook back in 2004. He famously put in $500,000.
And that initial $500,000 investment multiplied astronomically. It secured his status not just as a successful founder, but as this legendary VC predictor.
It really showed that he understood where the next huge social wave was headed.
And he didn't stop there. He's a significant partner at Founders Fund, which is a major San Francisco VC firm that he co-founded with several other Mafia members. And that fund has shaped so much of what we see in the Valley today.
And his current standing.
Estimates put his net worth at an impressive $10.5 billion. He is arguably the most influential intellectual capitalist in Silicon Valley.
So from the hyper-focused capitalist, we pivot to the interplanetary entrepreneur, Elon Musk. His journey through PayPal was a lot bumpier, a lot more conflict, but the money he made funded his moonshot ideas.
Musk was the founder of X.com, which merged with Confinity. And that merger, well, that created the tension that ultimately led to his famous exit.
He was fired.
Famously fired from the PayPal CEO job by the board while he was on vacation.
He was on his honeymoon, right? On a plane to Australia.
That's the story, fired while on a plane. It just shows you the ruthlessness of that early corporate tech culture.
It's the ultimate revenge of the fired CEO story, except his revenge wasn't against PayPal. It was to, completely change the world's infrastructure.
And he had the money to do it. Despite the messy exit, he kept his shares and netted around $180 million from the eBay sale.
That $180 million became the rocket fuel for his post-PayPal ambitions.
It really did.
Yeah.
And look what he launched with that initial capital. He became the majority stakeholder in Tesla, fundamentally revolutionizing the car industry by forcing the move to electric vehicles.
He founded SpaceX, which single-handedly reshaped the entire space industry by achieving reusable rockets and just crushing launch costs.
And you can't forget the Boring Company and Neuralink either. These aren't small incremental improvements. These are entire industries he's trying to build.
That $180 million from the PayPal sale was seed money for a legacy that now includes achieving orbit and defining personal transportation for a generation.
It's incredible. And in a recent, very symbolic twist, he acquired Twitter, rebranded it as X, and symbolically reclaimed the original X domain from PayPal.
Bringing the whole story full circle.
His net worth today is estimated at an astonishing $247.8 billion. The sheer scale of transformation from just one individual it's breathtaking.
It really puts that initial $1.5 billion PayPal sale into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. That one liquidity event created multiple centibillionaires and billionaires whose total combined influence is now just. It's impossible to measure.
Okay, next up, Reid Hoffman, the architect of professional networking. While Thiel and Musk were fighting over payments and data and rockets, Hoffman was quietly building the connective tissue of modern corporate life.
Hoffman was a key operational leader at PayPal. He was the COO, and he handled a lot of the crucial external communications. He was really instrumental in keeping things stable during all the internal chaos and the external regulatory fights.
And after the acquisition, his focus shifted completely, away from payments and toward professional connectivity.
That's right. He co-founded LinkedIn, which basically pioneered the business-oriented social network. Unlike, Facebook, which was about your personal life, LinkedIn focused on utility, your career, recruitment, networking.
And that focus on utility made it incredibly valuable and recession-proof.
Immensely valuable. LinkedIn's exit was monumental. It was acquired by Microsoft for a massive $26.2 billion.
$26 billion.
And Hoffman subsequently joined Microsoft's board, which further cemented his influence inside one of the world's biggest legacy tech companies.
Beyond LinkedIn, he's also a really dynamic and prolific investor, keeping up that Mafia tradition of recycling capital. He's a partner at Greylock Partners, one of the most respected VC firms out there.
And he had early stakes in huge companies like Airbnb and Aurora.
And importantly, showing he's still looking ahead, he was a founding investor in OpenAI.
Which is so important. It ensures he has a deep early stake and influence in the current foundational revolution of artificial intelligence. It proves the Mafia's influence isn't stuck in the 2000s. It's actively shaping the 2030s.
Finally, in this core group, we have Max Levchin. If Thiel was the capitalist and Musk the visionary, Levchin was maybe the purest technical mind. He was focused on the core problem that saved the company: security and fintech.
Absolutely. Levchin was a co-founder, and his technical contributions were foundational, especially his work on anti-fraud.
Right, because at the time, PayPal was just hemorrhaging money from fraud.
Millions of dollars a month from fraudulent transactions and bots. The very survival of the company depended on some kind of technical innovation to stop the bleeding.
And his most noteworthy innovation here was the co-creation of the Gosbeck-Levchin test.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but its impact is impossible to overstate. That test was one of the first commercial, highly effective implementations of a capitichere.
The thing we all know and love.
The thing we all know. The challenge response human test. It wasn't just a simple checkbox. It involved that distorted text that only a human could easily read.
So why was that specific technical fix so foundational? We see capiticieres everywhere now, but what did it do for PayPal back then?
It was a critical, immediate weapon against automation. Bots were scaling faster than PayPal could hire human fraud reviewers. The Gosbeck-Levchin test gave them an automated shield.
It must have saved them a fortune.
Potentially tens of millions of dollars that were just being lost to fake accounts and fraudulent transfers. It stopped automated fraud right when the threat was existential and gave PayPal a huge competitive edge in digital trust.
And that security mindset really defined his post-PayPal career, too. He stuck to that fintech and security path.
He did. He founded or co-founded Slide.com, HVF, and his current big company, Affirm, which provides consumer financing options and is trying to bring more transparency to the lending space.
He was also a very early investor in Yelp and was their largest shareholder in 2012, which shows his faith in his former PayPal colleagues. And we have to mention his surprising detail, which is a great reminder that not everything they touched was, pure B2B software. Max Levchin was a producer for the movie Thank You for Smoking.
That detail is a brilliant illustration of how wide their interest and their influence spread. They don't just invest in infrastructure, they invest in culture and media. They're moving beyond venture capital and into Hollywood, showing this desire to influence the stories being told in the world.
Okay, so we've established the Dons and the core co-founders, but the real breadth and depth of the Mafia's influence comes from the dispersed talent. The engineers, product managers, designers who left with cash and went on to revolutionize huge chunks of the internet.
And you have to start with the legendary YouTube trio.
Jawed Karim, Steve Chen, and Chad Hurley.
All three met while working at PayPal, and their work there was highly technical and foundational. Kareem, for example, designed a lot of PayPal's core components, including its complex, real-time anti-fraud system.
It's amazing how much that anti-fraud system seems to have been a crucible for world-changing talent. The very people fighting the bad guys were the ones who went on to define how we all watch video today.
The experience was paramount. Running a high-volume payments platform means you have to get good at handling massive, real-time transaction loads and detecting anomalies instantly.
And that expertise was directly transferable to running a high-traffic media platform like YouTube.
Exactly. They founded YouTube in 2005.
And the success was it was lightning fast. They launched, iterated like crazy, and were sold to Google just 1 year later in 2006 for $1.65 billion.
$1.65 billion. Kareem personally cashed in his shares for $64 million, a huge payout that let him go on to found other ventures like University Ventures.
And the founding story itself is full of these unique, memorable details. Kareem was the first person to ever upload a video to the site.
Me at the Zoo.
Me at the Zoo. That simple 18-second clip that has now been viewed over 310 million times. It's a literal piece of internet history.
And we shouldn't overlook Chad Hurley's specific contribution from his PayPal days, which really speaks to the diversity of talent in that company.
What was his role?
Before he co-founded YouTube and became its CEO, he actually handled the original PayPal logo design and managed some early user interface issues.
So he was on the design side.
The design side. And at YouTube, he was primarily responsible for the crucial tagging and video sharing aspects, the very things that allowed the content to be easily indexed and to spread virally.
Moving from video to local discovery, we have the story of Yelp and Jeremy Stoppelman. He was a former VP of engineering at PayPal, came from the X.com side, so another veteran of those internal wars.
Stoppelman's origin story for Yelp is the quintessential Silicon Valley anecdote. It just proves that the best products solve a real personal pain point.
The idea didn't come from a market analysis report.
No, it came when he was doing a summer internship at a VC firm called MRL Ventures. He got sick with the flu and was desperately looking online for a reliable doctor review platform.
And there was nothing.
There was nothing. He realized that this critical local need wasn't being met by any existing service.
And that frustration led to the idea for a reliable, aggregated review platform for local businesses.
And he co-founded Yelp in 2004 with another PayPal coworker, Russell Simmons. So it's another pure Mafia venture. And Yelp, like so many of these companies, attracted major acquisition interest very quickly.
From Google specifically.
From Google. And they famously turned down a huge acquisition offer from them and instead took the company public in 2012.
Asserting their independence against one of the biggest forces in tech. That decision to keep control feels very characteristic of the Mafia's entrepreneurial spirit.
It does.
So, if the founders laid the groundwork, the VCs of the Mafia created the institutional infrastructure. We need to talk about the venture capital powerhouses who act as the central nervous system of this whole financial web. Starting with Roelof Botha.
Botha is a fascinating case. He's a South African actuary by training, which speaks directly to that math-loving analytical background that Lifton talked about.
And he's a partner at Sequoia Capital.
One of the most powerful and storied venture firms in the world. His analytical rigor, which was honed at PayPal, made him a perfect predictor of successful market disruption.
And his influence is it's everywhere. He worked with Instagram, Future Advisor, Mixpanel, but his board presence is really a testament to his foresight.
It is. He served on the boards of YouTube and Meebo before Google bought them, and on Tumblr's board before Yahoo acquired it.
He is the ultimate connector and predictor. He identifies these companies before they scale and ensures that Mafia capital, and by extension, Mafia influence, gets a seat at the table early on.
Today, he sits on the boards of MongoDB, Square, Unity, and Zoom. And his status is reflected in the rankings. He was 9th on Forbes' Midas list in 2021.
And then there's David Sachs, truly a multi-hyphenate who just epitomizes the Mafia's model of recycling talent and expertise.
He was the COO and product leader at PayPal, and then he went on to found and co-found several major companies himself.
He founded Yammer, the enterprise social network that was bought by Microsoft, and Genie.com, the genealogy social network.
even stepped in as interim CEO of Zenefits for a while to right a ship that was in pretty serious trouble. And on the investment side, he co-founded Craft Ventures, an early-stage venture fund, which basically formalized his role as a capital recycler.
But his angel investments, they read like a Silicon Valley Hall of Fame. And this is where you see the Mafia synergies so clearly. Facebook, Uber, SpaceX, and Palantir.
Right. He's explicitly investing in ventures launched by Thiel and Musk.
That internal recycling of capital is such a key part of their enduring influence.
It is. It lets them bypass the traditional gatekeepers and just rapidly accelerate each other's projects. They implicitly trust the shared experience and judgment they built at PayPal. It creates this closed loop of funding for disruptive ideas.
We have several other notable figures we need to highlight to really grasp the depth of this talent pool, and they bring some wonderfully quirky facts too. Let's start with Luke Nosek.
Luke Nosek was a co-founder and served as vice president of marketing and strategy at PayPal. He created the crucial instant transfer product. And he, too, co-founded Founders Fund with Keel and Howery, solidifying that capital network.
And the quirky fact tied to him is unforgettable. I think it says so much about the radical, future-focused worldview this group shared. In his first conversation with Thiel, Nosek told him he had just registered for cryonic suspension.
Cryonic suspension, low-temperature preservation after legal death in the hopes of being revived in the future.
And Thiel didn't just find it weird.
No. Peter Thiel later followed Nosek's example and made similar arrangements. It speaks to the shared, radical, anti-death, future-focused ideology that characterized this early group. They were not conventional thinkers at all.
Next, Kenneth Howery, another key piece of the financial puzzle.
Howery was a co-founder and served as PayPal's CFO from 1998 to 2002. He managed the finances during the most chaotic high-growth phase. He also co-founded Founders Fund.
And the connections run deep. So deep. He managed the Stanford Review, a student newspaper that Peter Thiel founded during their university days. After eBay, he rejoined Thiel at Clarium Capital. The collaboration was constant.
And his later career took a surprising political turn, which shows the kind of mobility their wealth gave them. He served as the U.S. ambassador to Sweden from 2019 to 2021 under President Donald Trump.
A clear example of the tremendous political mobility and clout that this financial success afforded them. We also have Yishan Wang, who was a senior engineering manager at PayPal from 2001 to 2005.
Wang went on to become the CEO of Reddit from 2012 to 2014, taking over one of the internet's most significant community platforms.
And now he's the founder and CEO of Terraformation, which is focused on restoring forests globally, a pretty significant pivot from high-traffic consumer tech to environmental impact.
Then there's Yupan. He's mentioned as one of the original 6 people who started PayPal, and, critically, he was the very first employee at YouTube. He later co-founded Kiwi Crate. Like many others, he was an alumnus of the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, which highlights that shared educational background in math and science.
And speaking of foundational knowledge, Scott Bannister, an early advisor and board member at PayPal, whose legacy affects every single internet user and every business that makes money online today.
Indeed. Bannister is credited with inventing paid search advertising via keyword auction.
Let's break that down. To really understand the Mafia's reach, you have to understand this invention.
Before this model, digital ads were often sold on flat rates or simple impressions. Bannister's idea was to auction off specific keywords, letting advertisers bid against each other for placement.
And that keyword auction model became the core business model for basically all of the internet advertising giants.
It is the engine that runs Google. It runs Facebook. It runs nearly every major digital platform. It democratized advertising entry. But it also created this infinitely scalable revenue stream based on demand and competition.
That one innovation is maybe the most monetarily impactful business model to come out of the entire extended PayPal network.
It could be. It's just stunning how many foundational elements of the modern internet, from the payment rails to video platforms to professional networking to the entire advertising revenue engine, can all be traced back to this one company.
It's why the term mafia really fits. Their influence isn't just a collection of companies, it's systemic. It underpins the financial and architectural reality of the 21st century web. That brings us to the Mafia's enduring clout and their internal dynamics. The influence they have goes way beyond just the companies they personally founded. How wide is this financial web, and how do they stay so connected?
The sources suggest they are connected to over 400 companies through executive roles and individual investments. But the reach is even greater because they established and contributed to these major Silicon Valley investment funds.
Like Founders Fund, Craft Ventures, Greylock Partners.
Right. And that gives them a piece of the action in literally thousands more ventures across the globe.
So if you're a startup in the Valley, there's a good chance that money from the PayPal Mafia is finding its way to your balance sheet, even if it's indirect. And as we mentioned earlier with Levchin and his film production, they haven't stuck to traditional SV tech.
No, their scope is incredibly wide. We see them funding things like private spaceflight with SpaceX. We have the connection to Hollywood with Max Levchin. And they're deeply involved in political campaign groups like FWD.US.
The pro-immigration lobbying group that Hoffman co-founded.
Exactly. They're moving into culture, policy, and global infrastructure all at the same time.
And this immense wealth and influence, it naturally leads to politics, which has created some really intense internal clashes. Despite their shared history, the money has flowed into different and sometimes opposing political arenas.
That's a key dynamic today. The group includes major political donors on both sides of the aisle. Reid Hoffman, for example, is a known supporter of Democrats and progressive causes.
Often focusing on issues like immigration reform and strengthening democratic institutions.
Right, and this puts him in direct conflict with Peter Thiel and David Sachs, who are known supporters of Donald Trump and more conservative libertarian causes.
They often focus on challenging what they see as political correctness and the established order.
And we report these facts just to illustrate that this political influence is a huge part of their ongoing legacy. They don't share one single political ideology, but they all seem to share the belief that their financial success gives them the right and the responsibility to shape policy.
The financial connection is stronger than the ideological one.
It seems to be.
And just a fun note on their collective identity. The rights to a movie about the PayPal Mafia are actually owned by former PayPal employees Jack Selby and David Sachs.
Which means they control the cinematic narrative of their own history. That is classic power consolidation. You control the money, the infrastructure, and the story itself.
Finally, let's look at the blueprint for success here. What can we learn from this collective experience? Why did this specific group at this specific time succeed so spectacularly?
The sources identify this powerful synergy built on three pillars. First, they had an extraordinary combination of entrepreneurial flair, world-class education Stanford, the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, and just raw networking prowess. They were highly skilled, highly educated, and incredibly ambitious.
But the collaboration is the key, and it's so different from a traditional corporate structure.
It is. They actively built and maintained this powerful network where they called on each other constantly for money, for advice, for operational support. There are stories that many of their billion-dollar ventures took root during these relaxed Sunday barbecues at each other's homes, not informal board meetings.
That intimate environment, it must have fostered immense trust and allowed them to deploy resources very, very quickly.
Which is vital in a startup environment. And their collective success highlights that entrepreneurship really thrives in a collaborative environment. It completely debunks the myth of the lone genius inventor.
And the organizational structure they modeled is fascinating. The temporary team model. This goes beyond just being good collaborators.
Yes, the case study suggests that the most effective teams are often temporary ones. This group was made up of a diverse range of collaborators from different backgrounds and skill sets. They weren't looking for long-lasting partnerships in the traditional sense. They were forming these fleeting but incredibly impactful teams that could quickly solve real-world problems.
Can you elaborate on the sociological advantage of that temporary team model?
Sure. The advantage is ruthless efficiency and adaptation. Once the core mission was solved, in this case building PayPal and selling it, they didn't suffer from legacy bureaucratic ties or, inertia.
They just dispersed.
They dispersed and immediately reformed into new, temporary, and highly specialized teams for the next big challenge: YouTube, Tesla, Palantir. They were experts in rapid deployment and resource allocation. David Sachs investing in Thiel's Palantir and Musk's SpaceX is the perfect example of this model working over and over again.
Which speaks perfectly to the idea of resilience forged in crisis. As Eric Jackson's book, The PayPal Wars chronicles, they overcame immense legal and regulatory threats.
The threats were constant. PayPal faced legal battles from huge banks like Wells Fargo, competitive threats from credit card companies, and critically, this intense regulatory scrutiny over money transmission laws in different states. They were constantly fighting to define themselves and avoid being shut down as an unregulated bank.
That shared intensity, that constant high-stakes battle during the formative PayPal years, created bonds that lasted for decades.
They weren't just colleagues. They were comrades who had survived a digital war together.
And that experience is what cemented the connections that allowed them to trust each other implicitly when the next massive investment opportunity came along.
Absolutely. The most important asset they left PayPal with wasn't the $1.5 billion. It was the Rolodex and the shared sense of trust.
So, to summarize the enduring legacy of the PayPal Mafia, this small, intense group of individuals, forged in the fires of an early fintech startup and its massive sale, managed to shape the entire modern technology landscape.
From the way we communicate professionally, to how we watch videos, to the way governments analyze data.
And even how we fund and execute space travel.
The enduring insight here, especially for you, the learner, is that deep knowledge and success aren't just about the initial idea or the initial capital. It's about the team.
It's about the network.
Specifically, the lasting, powerful networks built during those intense, formative, and often crisis-ridden experiences, like the PayPal wars. That's what truly matters long-term.
It's not just the financial capital, it's the relationship infrastructure they built that sustains them.
Exactly. The most influential group in modern business was built on a foundation of math-loving workaholics, whose defining feature was their ability to disperse and collaborate after the primary mission was completed. That ensured maximum impact across multiple industries.
Which leaves a question for you to consider.
The question is this: what highly effective temporary team environment are you currently in, be it a project team, a graduate program, or an intense startup phase? That might be inadvertently seeding the world's next great generation of founders and influential leaders.
I'll agree.
Because the next massive movement is often started by the person struggling right next to you under intense pressure.